Recording in progress.
Right. Now let's move to configurations, the banner. Let's try to configure our banner, starting by understanding the banner key and its importance. I always say banner is like a beware of the dogs rinoiswa pagate. Beware of the dogs in the sense kuti uzive kuti pane imbwa. Ukangoda kupinda usingazivikanwe papo unogona kurumwa. And you cannot blame us because takaisa banner rinoti beware of the dogs. Musapinde. A banner to our devices, it has the same function, preventing unauthorized access. Uchingopinda device, let's say waona access via the console. Uchingopinda device unosangana nebhana rakati, if you are not authorized, do not proceed from here. Iwo ukaita proceed, that will be used. That statement banner will be used to prosecute by law. Kuti bhana ranga rizoripo rakati munhu ngaasapinde. So uyu wamutemo, because in networking, I'll tell you a story where I learned. I wasn't in Zoom, but I got a master's rank, even bachelor's. Telecommunications is a very sensitive industry. Attachment weren't even allowed with attachment in their service providers, my telecommunications company now. That's how sensitive it is. So mutemo wakasimba ku-telecommunications haungopindi pese pese and you tamper with whatever is there. So be warned, nyaya dzetelecommunications is obviously leading kunana networking. Every piece of information is very sensitive and you have to learn at this early stage kuti zvinhu hazvingosiyiwe pese pese, madevice asiwe pese pese, mapasswords asiwe pese pese, because zvinokonzeresa generalizing. So how do we configure a banner? The command is banner motd, then OSM hash between my delimiters, between the message that you want to send. Let's go to our packet tracer. Let's try to create our banner. Banner redu runs from global configuration mode. Command is banner motd. Instead of using my hash, you can use any character as long as that character is not in the message. So I can use J, for example, JJ. And my message is no trespassing. No trespassing. Danger. That's my message. My message apana J up. So it means I can use J as a delimiter. The reason why we use hash, because we cannot have hash in our message as well. Right. Bana redu rapo. Ndoenda ku exit. Ndodzokera kwekutanga so that we can see bana redu. Exit again. Kwekutanga, no trespassing. Danger. There is our banner. So the moment you get access to a device, the first thing chaunosangana nacho is the banner. It's talking about if you are not authorized, do not proceed. Right. From banner, we go to saving my configurations. After you've done all the changes that you've done on your device, let's say in Zoom, you know this, magetsi overenda. What happens when you switch on the device again, magetsi adzova? You will not see all the settings that you are changing. You need to save them so that unokwanisa kuzomaona if a switch reloads. Now, with respect to saving my configurations, allow me to introduce very important. Allow me to introduce okay, memories, types of memories that we have. device redu switch rine memories mainly akawanda, but mainly we discuss yatinoti RAM. I think kuma-PCs munobvunzana RAM yakura sei, right? Then tine yatinoti NVRAM, right? RAM is volatile. NVRAM, it stands for non-volatile RAM. RAM is na NV is volatile. What does that mean? When you switch on your device, switch, rise for power, you switch it on. What the switch shows you is what we call the startup. Startup configurations at the start, at the beginning. The startup configurations are stored in the NVRAM, non-volatile RAM. So they are stuck in the system of the device. Startup configuration. Even if Mageza and the switch reloads, you still have the startup configuration because it's in the non-volatile RAM. Switch redu on, we want to change my settings. Taisa host name redu, tachinja mabana, everything, my passwords taisa. Zvese zvatiri kuita izvozvozvo anonzi running configurations. So my settings atiri kuchinja anonzi running configurations, and they are stored in a different type of memory inonzi RAM. This one is volatile. It means if you do not save, then everything disappears. Running configurations. So what is saving? Saving here is changing, moving my settings from the running config achienda to the startup config. So you move them from the RAM achienda to NVRAM. Once aendako, they become the startup config. Now if the switch reloads, they are now saved. And the command itself, I think it's copy running config to startup config. That's the command in short. Let me see. Chairo ichi. I know it's copy running config, startup config. Basically meaning you're copying the running configurations to this startup configuration. That is what we call saving. Nyaze RAM, non-volatile RAM, very important because you definitely see a question here in something to do with the RAM and the non-volatile RAM. What is stored in the non-volatile RAM? You need to know that is the startup. And what is stored in the RAM? That is the running config. What is saving is moving the running configs to the startup configs. Very important. Right? So the command, okay, it's not here. Outer. Okay, the command to save configurations. Okay, it's here. They didn't put it in the demonstration. There it is. Copy running config, startup config. That's how you save. And where are you? You are in the privileged exec mode. Ukasa command mode 3, I repeat, it will not work. It will never work. Right. So our password simple HHP. I caps lock. Okay. HHP. Another thing, my password not there is nothing chinenge. I've seen a lot of students struggle kuti ko password is say. As long as you are typing and your keyboard is functional, find something you don't just see it. So password inenge yapezwa. Even by my real physical devices, the same thing. In fact, just as I'm going up, it's the same thing you will see from here my labs. I know a lot of people will be saying in my labs here, but you see a lot of fun. You don't go and go better PC, but there isn't much to see by my Cisco devices, by my switch, by my router. There isn't much. You all end up marketing some laptops and configuring. Says what wrong with it right now. Right. Copy running startup. That's the command to save. Enter destination file name startup. That's the destination file name. We are moving from running to startup. Enter building configurations. Okay, now our settings have been saved. So if this switch reloads, if this switch Zesa goes, Rodzima, and we switch it on again, you still have your settings zoning wise. All right, let's move to outer the running configurations. All right, let's say you want to change everything that you've configured from a running configurations. There is a command known as reload. There's a command, okay, rest startup is a bit deep. Reload. Reload, it takes you back to the startup configurations. So let's say watanga kuisa my password, you haven't saved them yet. Obo wakanganwa in password. Provided we're in the right mode already, you can say reload my password some running configurations of abva yokudzosera startup kunenge kusina password. So that's the command here, reload, altering the running configurations. Then we have a very dangerous command, erase startup configurations. That one is very dangerous. You can use that kudzokera kwekutanga as well. But rinowanzo delete zvinhu zvakawanda. So I don't recommend kutambira erase startup config at this level. Altering the running configurations, reload is safe. Erase, not safe at all. Capture configuration to a text file. Right. At times, my configurations atinoita probably akafanana. So let's say my basic configurations angati hit up. Tachinja host name. Where are we in Africa? Let me write. Won't win. Okay, let's write again. Right. So tatita change our host name, but I change my passwords. Number 3, vadaisa banner. Number 4, vadata encryption. Number 5, we save. Right. These are the basic commands that I did so far. We are on a company in 1,000 must switch. Do you have to configure one by one as 1,000 kusvika apera? Of course, nowadays we have what we call network automation. You don't have to configure everything one by one. The network is automated. Zvinoita zvega, generalizing. But kwakatangira automation, making things easy, you could copy the text. It's much easier doing it from physical devices. You could copy the text. Where is it? Let me see. Config, desktop. Where do we find this text? You could copy the text. Rema commands as on wide. Let me see, where do I find it? Config, settings, algorithm, fast, Bluetooth. That's how I'm getting around the book. Actually, is shock. Let me see. So the whole idea up and the instead of inputting my commands one by one for my devices hobo, you just copy the set of commands and you paste by every device. So unonga get a copy, open them terminal, paste, then my settings ese kana akafanana. Kana akasiyana, especially by my host name, you just go and edit by host name, then that's it. Let me see. Let me see. Session logins now disable. Show startup config. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm trying to figure out if I can save my configurations, but my device is to open up. I know it's very easy, but the real device, it should be there. Let me see. Terminal. Okay, I'm not seeing it. Config settings. Give me some time, just a minute. No, it should be right here. Config. Right here. Thank you very much. Okay, so per simulation, it's a bit different than the real devices. Per simulation, you can see my commands ese angati aripa, right? Ndikauya panapa, I can export my commands angu ese andaita. Right, I can export them. Don't save in a text file. Let me put them by desktop. Configuration successfully saved. Is it possible to configure a switch on a packet trace and then export as text and load on a real device? Yes, it's very possible. That's why it's in my simulation tools. The whole idea of having my simulation tools is so that we test whatever ideas we have by my networks, by my simulation tool. If it works by simulation tool, most probably it's going to work on the live network. You cannot test by live network because it's a live network. My disruptions analytical can be critical. All right, let me go to desktop yedu. And you can see the file right negative server. Where is the text? Right, this one. Right, so this is the text file. So ukatora zvese zviri apa izvi, ukati copy, oenda ungonozvipesta, or importer, export, import. Right, it's export, import, like this. You can see pane option import panapa. Of this. Right, merge, startup config, merge, export, load. No, the one I wanted to use is load. So if this is a new switch, the console load, do not select a file. Let's do this in reality. Let's do this. Let's add another switch. It's now config. Let's add another switch. It's now config and see exactly where I'm going. Right. Switch another configuration repo. Let's add a console. Test another PC. Test another console. RS232. Right. Switch here we haven't configured it yet. Arina chiripo ichi. Right. If I go on guys, I'm sure any configurations. Check my configurations that now at the moment. Enable host name are not changing. Show run. Right. Nothing has been changed. My password panap. Apana my password that. Right. But the way panap. They got load. Let's go and load text file already here. This one. Right. Configurations loaded successfully. Ndochidzoka padevice rangu. Let's exit terminal to dzoka again. Let me try to see. Show run. No change. No. Let me see from here. Oops. Run. Nothing was loaded here. No change. Just a minute. Let me figure out a way to explain exactly what I want to explain. Show run. Okay, my passwords edu are encrypted, so they cannot change. Yeah. It's artificial now. Config, export. So do this. Desktop. Let me see if we have a change now. Right. I think my change is up or here. Enable, show, run. Okay. So you see, Apple we've successfully transferred the text file ranga configure on this device. Tikangouya tikarichinja tikaisa on this device. It becomes much easier. So what you can do, for example, kana uchida kuchinja apa pamahostname atofanana. What you can do, you can edit this text file. This is text file. You can edit it to end up a hostname. Let's change it to CCNB. Right, let's save it and see what happens. Kutoka pano. So instead of my startup to myself, my running, it makes work easier. So instead of doing my commands S one by one, this is how you deal with them. Come back here, switch the $CCNB, $CCNB. So this is how you use my text file to change my configurations in. So up I say you're also allowed to write script and then paste it. Voila, exactly. You are allowed to do that. That is the beginning of automation. So when you take off network automation, basically it's adding programming to networking. And programming, what is programming? Programming is writing your own script. So with programming, you write your own script, then or feed it to the network. And the network acts according to what you've written to the script. That is what network automation is. You're catching up very quick. All right, so text file altering, I think we're done with that one. Chasara a practice, especially on the real devices. How to match these things. Let's go back. Right, capture configuration file, blah, 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 done. Ports and addresses. Every device in a network is supposed to have an address. Every port on a device is supposed to have an address. An address allows us to identify a device in a network. An address allows us to identify a device in a network. All right, let me see. I want to write something. IP address. Very important. Near the IP addresses, IP addressing. Right. So every device, for us to identify it in a network, it needs an IP address, as well as every port. So on a switch, remember ports, 8 my ports. Ese anengani my IP address. I'm for my IP address. Not a switch, if I can say. Let's put a router. Let's be more realistic. Let's put a router, DNS for my IP address. Layer 3 device. Ese my ports are anengani my IP address. Per switch, however, switch runs a layer 2 device. Right, router, switch. Router runs layer 3 device. We'll explain. I think Zema layers do it in the next chapter. Switch runs a layer 2 device. What we mean, router run operator using the IP address, switch run operator using the MAC address. ASMR address, which are used to identify a device. So PC yangu panap over the internet in an address. If someone wants to send information to my PC, they use that address. If you want to send something to Google, to search for something on Google, you send some information, a request to the server at Google. Server iroro rine an IP address. So paunoisenda information yako, my devices anotodzana kuti the address yatiri kusenda is 10.chakadaro.1.1.1. That's the IP address, right? Then the MAC address is a bit different from the IP address, but it's still an address. So switch, it operates at layer 2 with the MAC address. Router, it operates at layer 3 with the IP address. Pane question ipapo inotoya maexam. Very important. Tinema switch also operate at layer 3. We'll get there. The point yandida kubuditsa ndeyekuti switch ndikauya ndikarisa munetwork, I don't even need to configure an IP address on it kuti refunction, because it operates at layer 2 using the MAC address. So there is no need yekuisa IP address per switch. But in this level, your basic device configuration, you need to understand kuti patinotaura nezve remote access, patinotaura nezve SSH, you want to connect to your device remotely. Address yauri connecta nayo using yabva kupi? Because remote access, it does not use the MAC address, it uses the IP address. So switch from network now, it functions proper, no problem. But you cannot remotely access it. To remotely access it, it needs an IP address. So ndosaka richizoiswa an IP address switch. Going back to our text, ports and addresses. Here, they were just explaining what an IP address is. 32-bit number. I don't think at this point we need to introduce my numbers as DPSA. Like I said, by IP addressing, as well. IP addresses, what we need to understand, every port, router, an IP address. Switch, your IP address to manage, to remotely manage the device. Tiripapo, to remotely manage. Pane configuration is default gateway, the default gateway is the gate out of a network. The default gateway is the gate out of a network. Right, let's do this. So this is my router. This is Harare network. Right, this is H, Harare. This is Bulawayo network. Bulawayo, right. Then we have a switch, Harare. Okay, let's not say Harare Bulawayo. It's too far. Okay, but it works. Nema PC header, PC 1, 2, 3. Then we have another switch. Rikuno Nema PC 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My devices and my IP addresses. Switch read an IP address to remotely monitor it. My ports are a router and my IP address. If the device number 4, ndoda kumanage device rikuno, that is a remote device. Why? Because it's in a different network. Takambotaura, patika introduce a router. Tikati every interface router, it represents a different network, a local area network. And that is how I wanted you to understand my networks. I think that is how I wanted you to understand my networks. This is a network 1. This is a network 2. My network sakasiyana. Kana my devices are my network sakasiyana achida communicate, and yet not remote communication. So if device number 4 wants to communicate with this, that is remote access. To remotely access, it needs an IP address. Therefore, that's why we give this device an IP address. Tiripapo, device iri parinoda send information, it needs to know what is the gate out of my network, and that is what we call the default gateway. The gate out of this network here is the IP address on this interface right there. And kuside kunoko, the gate out of the network is the IP address on this interface. If you do not tell the devices in your network kuti what is the gate out of the network, those devices will never be able to send information outside the network. Inside the network, local mono, they will be able to send. Why? They will operate at layer 2 using MAC addresses. They can send information. But outside the network, they will not be able because they do not have the default gateways. Coming back to our slide, to introduce an IP address, to introduce some ports, interfaces and ports. My interfaces and ports, I think, ndakama introduce briefly. Ndakati a port is an interface. We have two types of interfaces: the physical interface and the virtual interface. A port is just a physical interface. This is a port. Mabure ari pamaswitch aya ndo maswitch aya apa. If I can zoom in, those are my switch, right? My ports aripo aya. Those are the physical interfaces. We can create my visual interfaces. Visual meaning it's not physically there. It's an interface, but not physically there. We can do that. So interfaces and ports, a port is an interface. We understand that. Media, we introduced media already. The vehicle that transmits our information. I think we're repeating information here. Some of the difference between various types of media include distance the media can successfully carry, environment, amount of data, cost of the media and installation. But I introduce a media, I think chapter 1, I discussed we have different types of media. Number 1, which use different techniques. We have fiber, which uses light. We have copper, which uses electrical signals. The distance that the media can carry, it also differs depending on the type of material. For example, fiber can carry up to 10 kilometers, fiber. 10 kilometers, signal rinokwanisa kufamba. But copper, 100 meters, more than 100 meters, the Ethernet cable, inenge yane losses are significant. You cannot transmit information more than 100 meters. Ndopa repeated distance. Environment. Tikaita environment pasi pemvura, we cannot use wireless. It's also a media. Tinoshandisa fiber. We have undersea cables that are there. That is the environment. Kumusha kwasingakwanisawo kusvika fiber because of cost. Satellites can work wireless. That's another media, depending on the environment. So media is also dependent on the type of environment inoshandiswa. Kana tiri paenvironment in a lot of obstructions, wireless so haiti because of my obstructions anenge aripo. Amount of data, that's capacity. Fiber currently ndo ine capacity yakawanda kupfuura mamedia ese. Fiber, right? Capacity 30-ton truck, Honda Fit, different things. Cost of media, fiber over short distances is very costly. I think those are things you need to understand. Why it's important? Because ndimi muchadesigna manetworks. Ndimi muchachoose kuti panapa distance iri between mapoints edu atoda kuconnecta i 200 meters. So tikashandisa Ethernet cable haishandi because pane malosses. We are going to use fiber. That knowledge will be very important going forward. Let me try to finish. 4 minutes configuring IP addresses. My IP addresses can be configured by my devices edu. For example, pa computer andinayo even yaunayo as well. If you go to right here, for my network and internet settings, that's how you change your IP address if you want to change it. To end up, let's go by change adapter options. We want to change adapter options. We cannot change a Wi-Fi each because that's one I'm using. Properties, right? I go to IPv4, I go to properties, and voila. Ndikauya pano, I can change my IP address. 192 practice, those I'm changing dash 16 20 1 101. Okay, let's do that. Then we have our subnet mask. Then we have our default gateway. So particularly kunoita practice, this is how we are going to change my IP address from my PC's edu so that we can make my connections. I think that was the thing being demonstrated right here. Okay. Then for my IP addresses, we have manual configuration of my IP addresses. The one I'm going to get, that's manual. Then we have one iri dynamic, automatic. So you can see Panapans obtain an IP address automatically. In a network, especially if you are using Wi-Fi, my PC is getting an IP address automatically from the device and like I said, hotspot. That's automatic, that's not manual. We'll get there. Switch visual interface. Rest you have time. 2 minutes. Okay, let's go. Switch visual interface. Doma interface angandrutaura ari visual. Instead of having a port, we have really physical interface. We have a visual interface. Why are we creating the switch visual interface in this case? The reason why is because the switch is a layer 2 device. IP address, that's a layer 3 address. Saka kuti tikwanise kuisa IP address per switch, create a switch visual interface which allows us to add an IP address. Without creating that switch visual interface, you cannot be able to use IP address per switch. So let's create a switch visual interface. How do we do that? Enable, be a bit quick. I have 2 minutes. Or let's just continue with one last one. Right. Visual interface, VLAN 1. That's the VLAN we are going to be using. Enter. Then you will be able to input your IP address. Let's put 192.168.10.3. Then with our subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Enter. Command to activate the link. No shut. Our interface is now up. While at it, ukangoisa IP address per device, what follows is the default gateway. Because every device in an IP address, at some point, we need to communicate remotely. And how does that happen? There needs to be a gate out of the network, and the device needs to know that gate. IP default gateway. Listen, Redo Kakata midway. Log in for an extra, I think, 5-10 minutes. To pay this IP default gateway 192.168.10.1. Enter. Show running configurations. I can see my settings under Bono is I. Interface VLAN 1 IP address, need default gateway. Yeah. Right. Let me just continue. Allow me 5 minutes, will be done. I'm running out of time, but I'm ending this. Join in last 5 minutes.